I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. Everything I do so instinctive.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, degenerate sleuths of the night. We gather to boldly go where others have refused. Welcome to the DT show, you salty mofos.
A man accused of killing 4 college students is behind bars, and he has ties to northeastern and central Pennsylvania. State police say 28-year-old Brian Koberger was arrested this morning at a home in Chestnut Hill Township.
I can't find any case law that would support that idea. That somehow a warrant would be needed for DNA left at a crime scene.
We are expecting to learn more about the allegations against the girlfriend of a Boston police officer who was found unresponsive in the snow Saturday morning. I-Team sources say Karen Reed was in a relationship with John O'Keefe. She's facing charges including motor vehicle homicide and manslaughter.
So, the Commonwealth just provided the court with information that causes me grave concern. The implications of that information may have profound effects on this defense and defense counsel.
So, get your popcorn ready and your choice of drink. Get your butt on your seat. Like, comment, and subscribe for a treat. Here we go. It's time for the show. The Drunk Turkey Show.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the DT show. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the Brown University shooting suspect who was just recently found deceased in a storage shed. An affidavit has been released in regards to everything in that case. And we're going to read that affidavit. We're going to go through it, kind of give you guys a step-by-step on how it is that they were able to identify the suspect, how it is that they were able to track him down. And had he not, taken his own life, I think he would have eventually been apprehended. Please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that notification bell, guys. Share the content if you would. I'd appreciate that. Want to say thank you to the mods. Thank you to the members and new subscribers that are joining. Welcome to the DT show. If you're not a member, consider becoming a member. You can become part of the Discord when you hit the join button. There's a link in the community. There you go, in the community tab for members only, and that'll get you into our Discord. And so go check it out. Good to see everybody here and everybody tonight. So without further ado, let's break it down. Let's get into it. Let's look at it. All right. So this is the affidavit. There's about 35 pages here, but in reality, probably closer to about 6 that are going to talk about what occurred and how they tracked him down. There's a lot of images of how they followed him through the neighborhood and things like that. So the affiant is Detective Ryan Fado. This is going to be the detective who has written this affidavit. And so this affidavit goes on to say, on December 13, 2025, at approximately 1606, Providence police responded to the area of 184 Hope Street in Barus Holley building on the Brown University campus for calls of an active shooter. Upon arrival, police found multiple gunshot victims. A large law enforcement deployment had begun to secure the buildings and search the area for suspects and further victims. Fire rescue responded and began to treat and transport wounded victims located in the area room 166, the Tanner Auditorium. This auditorium has staircases running up both sides with entrances at the top, at the bottom, and top. There were 10 victims in totality. 2 victims identified as Muhammad Aziz Umarzova. Man, I said this earlier, right? Zokov. Sorry about that. And Ella Cook, who were pronounced deceased on the scene. Muhammad was found deceased near the upper entry door of the auditorium, and Cook was found deceased at the floor between the aisles J and H. Now, what's not in here is whether or not the suspect had yelled something. Now, there's been some controversy on whether or not he did and what it is that he did. In the last press conference, the folks there mentioned that they didn't know what he said. Some folks said that they heard him say something. Some folks said he didn't. But the ones that did may have been like a barking noise. I don't know. I wish they would have put that in here, but it's not. If somebody heard anything or not, I assume that information will probably come out eventually. All right. Goes on to say the other 8 victims were transported to Rhode Island Hospital. Tanner Auditorium was used for an exam review session for Principles of Economics course at the time of the shooting, scheduled for 1,400 to 1,600 hours that day. The details for the final reviews were emailed to students by the course professor with the 5 review sessions scheduled. So one of the things that we discussed yesterday, briefly before the press conference started, I said, you know, him choosing this location was, you know, was it because of somebody that was there? And I don't know, I think some folks thought maybe perhaps it would have been Ella, that she may have been the target. Or was it because he was familiar with the area? Now, all accounts indicate that he was familiar with the area. This was the place that he attended college. He attended for 1 year back in 2000, but where he actually like studied in Brown University was in this particular building. And so, you know, one of the questions I had was, did he target somebody there and just get lucky that the cameras and things of that nature weren't around? Or was it more so that he cased out the place and it just so happened that they were occupying the building that day? And I'm assuming it's going to be more the latter, that he was casing it out. It sounds like it. Throughout this affidavit, we're going to see that he had been in the area a few times, which is going to, and we're going to have this discussion as we go through it, is how does this information fit with the information that we know that with the MIT professor whose life was taken, who is suspected to have been at the hands of the suspect here. And so we'll discuss that as we go along. I wonder if he was also casing out his home and following him and those type of things. My assumption is that we're going to find out that that's going to be the case, that they're going to see his vehicle parked there a few occasions, maybe even him going back and forth, those type of things. But I do not know that for a fact. That is just my speculation on that aspect. So let's continue. Description of the suspect was formed from interviews of a medium-build male subject wearing a face covering with a mask that covered his lower face. Students reported hearing multiple gunshots, and police would discover numerous 9mm shell casings in the hallway and steps leading down to the bottom of the auditorium. Multiple witnesses described the shooter enter from the back top of the auditorium and walking down as he fired across toward the front of the room. So if he came in and then came in and firing down, it's most likely that Muhammad, who also lost his life, he probably came in, I guess, after the gunshots started happening. And either that or he was the first one in the door. And so one of the, because of where his position was, it was either he came in afterwards while the suspect was leaving, or he was the first one in the door as a suspect entered. Providence BCI detectives, and I would say he was probably the first one. Most people, unless you're trained to, will run to the sound like gunfire and things like that. So it's most likely he was the first one at the door. And Providence BCI detectives and FBI investigators processed the crime scene. Investigators recovered ballistic evidence, 44 spent 9mm shell casings, 1 unfired cartridge casing, and numerous projectile fragments. Sounds like the gun jammed at one point with the 1 unfired cartridge casing. Now, I know conspiracy theories are going to say, well, you know, they threw in just 1 unfired cartridge casing. It's just one out of all these. Was it, you know, it's weird, right? It's not. Firing that amount of rounds, you know, I'm not surprised. You know, it just kind of depends on the maintenance of the gun. You know, if, you know, it seems like, and we're going to find out later that these were 30 round capacity magazines. Those will have more of a likely to fail versus a smaller one. And so there being one just means it jammed, and he had to re-rack the slide, and it shot out one that went out of the chamber that wasn't in there, right? That's my assumption. But it goes on to say 44 spent 9mm shell casings. This guy shot off quite a bit and either had 2 weapons, or as we find out that there was 2 high capacity magazines. So he had to, at least at some point, switch. And maybe that's the other, that could have been also the other situation where one of the rounds may have exited the magazine when he was, you know, switching out the magazines. You know, you got to understand, he's probably, you know, under, you know, he's doing what he's doing, obviously. And so he's trying to be quick. He's under pressure himself. So I can see that the stress in that scenario for himself, that he could actually, you know, eject a round by accident. I can see that being the case, especially if he's not like well trained in things like this, which I don't know his background. It hasn't been out there completely, but if he's not like proficient in guns and things like that, I can see that being a situation. Or it could be even a scenario where he walked in and he racked the gun, just because it's like, you know, you see people do that in the movies, and all that's going to do is just throw out an empty round. So a couple of different things. I mean, if there's some markings on the casing of the bullet itself, if it got jammed, yeah, you should be able to see that. And I'm sure they'll be able to tell. Let's see. Hit the like button, guys. Hit the like button. And I think if there's a hype button, guys, hit the hype button. I've never asked anybody to hit the hype button. I found out about something like this. So hit the hype button. All right. Let's see. Okay, it goes on to say 1 unfired cartridge casing and numerous projectiles and projectile fragments. The ammunition was both hollow point and frangible. The head stamps of these shell casings indicated manufacturers Sig, Norma, and True Love McLean T&M. 15 spent shell casings were located in the hallway, and 29 spent casings were found in the Tanner Auditorium Room 166. Within the auditorium, police also found 2 high-capacity magazines with a capacity of 30 rounds. I don't know if he dropped those. I mean, obviously he dropped those, but I don't know if he dropped those empty, or if he dropped those, like, if they were on his person and during the movement, if they just fell off of his person. If they were like, I think he had like a satchel, right? So if they were in his satchel, you know, his moving up and down, did they cause, you know, when he had to switch out from one magazine to another, did he drop one? I wish you would have said if it was if they were empty magazines or not. DNA profiles were developed from the submission of various pieces of ballistic evidence from the crime scene, specifically a prominent major full DNA STR profile from the fired cartridge casings were obtained and were entered into CODIS and returned as having no matches. And all that means is that this guy didn't have any, doesn't have a criminal record. This profile is sufficient in quality for comparison. Additionally, there is a different full DNA STR profile that is observed in all of the samples collected from the 2 submitted magazines and all cartridges received within those magazines. This profile is also entered CODIS and returned as having no matches. My assumption is that's probably the person who sold the suspect the ammunition. And so it says here that there's somebody else's DNA. I already know the conspiracy is going to be, who else is, was controlling it, handling it. This guy went through, I guess, having different SIM cards. I think he had a SIM card from some other country, deleting things, doing all this other stuff. You would think he would clean off the ammunition. But in reality, if he's doing something like this, he's not of sound mind. So he's probably not making sound decisions. So we have to keep that in mind. And just because he made mistakes, or just because some of the things he did were obvious, doesn't mean that he didn't make them. It's like in the Brian Koberger case. A lot of people would, say something to the effect like, well, why would he take his own car? Why would he turn off his phone? Why would he bring his phone? Why would he leave the knife sheath behind? And all these things. And my response always was, if somebody made those, that many mistakes, why are you surprised they got caught? At the end of the day, that guy was just as intelligent as this guy, as far as their study goes. This guy was a PhD student as well as Brian Koberger, but Brian Koberger was studying criminal justice. And so he had an insight into how investigations work and things like that. And so just because they're intelligent and just because, in hindsight, we may think of all these mistakes as armchair detectives. We see all these mistakes that they make and think, oh, well, you know what? We wouldn't make those mistakes knowing what we know now. But that's hindsight, and that's also talking from a reason and sound mind. We don't know what this guy was going through. I mean, he committed horrible acts. He goes out there and commits a mass shooting and in a university, and then turns around and takes the life of an MIT professor that he had some sort of relationship with. I think they both went to school, and I'm sure once we get the documents into those, which I'll break down those documents as well. Once we get those, that's going to give us an idea more into this. So this goes on to say, law enforcement teams conducted surveillance video canvas of all the surrounding areas. The suspect was identified that appears to be in a video across video surveillance sources. A systematic review of those video sources revealed that the suspect was circling the immediate area earlier in the day, and that at approximately 10:35 hours in the Manning and Coke streets. Okay, and so they go on to say a couple of places where they had seen him moving around and at what time, and it was throughout that morning for about 5 hours. It goes on to say that the suspect appears to be a heavyset male, wearing a face covering with his lower face and two-toned dark jacket. He walked with a distinct gait and had his right hand appeared in his jacket pocket in several video clips. I wonder what they're alluding to when they say that. Like, did he have an item with him? Did he have a weapon with him? I don't know. But I mean, obviously it appeared that he had his right hand. I wonder what he had in his pocket, that he had his right hand in there a lot. Maybe it was just a key fob. Maybe it was a phone. Let's see. He was then observed circling the same area at 1400 hours. Walking in the direction of Governor Street, 416, the suspect is seen on George Street encountering another individual, initially unknown, but later identified as John. Now, John is he's a hero here. I'll be honest with you. He's the guy that broke the case, identified the guy. Well, not necessarily identified him, but identified a situation with him that led to the discovery of his vehicle, and which got the ball rolling on who he was and where he was. The suspect runs away from John John then runs after the suspect in the same direction. Immediately after the interaction, the suspect and John are seen in close proximity. At approximately 15:15, the suspect is observed on Governor Street, George Street, Cook Street, and Benevolent Street. I hope I said that right. It should be noted that the residential neighborhood is within 1 to 3 blocks of the Barus Holley building. The suspect is observed on video surveillance walking from Manning to Hope Street and then on a Brown University exterior camera crossing Hope Street into the parking lot abutting Hope Street where the Barus Holley building is located. This was observed at 14:56 hours before the shooting. It should be noted that the Barus Holley building is equipped with only 2 exterior cameras, but has multiple entrances and exits and areas of ingress and egress, and the interior cameras do not cover room 166 and the hallways immediately surrounding it. So it sounds like they don't necessarily know how he got into the building, or his exact movements in the building outside of what they got from witness testimony. One of the video sources was obtained from a camera recording on Brown University shuttle bus nearby immediately after the shooting throughout a parking lot abutting Hope Street, captured the suspect walking away from the area. This observed to be at 16:03 hours immediately after the shooting. So they did a height analysis by the FBI, and that showed to be the suspect was 5'7" to 5'9". So it goes on to say several video clips and still images of the suspect were released to the media with requests for assistance in identifying the individual. On December 15th, detectives interviewed the shooting victims who were in the interior of the Tanner Auditorium room and sustained gunshot wounds. Victims observed the shooter enter the auditorium from the top rear. Detectives responded to the Rhode Island hospital to present, it's redacted, with still images of the suspect. The first witness said she got a good look at the suspect when provided a copy of the photo. She froze, physically pushed back, and became emotional. She confirmed that the image showed was the shooter. Detectives then spoke with another individual who indicated that he was in close proximity to the shooter when he was shot. He also confirmed that the shooter he saw in the hallway appeared to be the person in the photos presented. The detectives met with a third and presented him with an image of the suspect, who also identified the suspect in the images as the shooter. Providence Detective Matthew McGoffin, an ATF special agent, went and interviewed a custodian who works at Brown University. And he stated that he saw a suspicious person with a surgical mask and dressed in the same clothing, has released images of the suspect. On one occasion, this individual noticed he entered the door on Hope Street side, went immediately into the ground level bathroom across from the room 166. He recalled the specific dates of November 28th and December 1st and said that these encounters occurred between his shift at 3 p.m. and sunset. So this just kind of says that this guy, the suspect, was there a couple of times and looking at going into the building, kind of seeing, what would happen if he entered, what kind of, pushback would he get to go in, scoping out the place, probably looking at cameras and things like that. Looking at the layout, making sure he remembers everything, just casing out the place. Goes on to say that on December 16th, the tip command center received information from an anonymous source referring to a Reddit post from the Providence subreddit made by the username. The username is redacted, but this was later to be identified as being John, the guy that they saw in the video. He's also the Redditor. And this is so when we were covering the Brian Koberger case, there were some things that were coming out on Reddit. Me and the guys actually looked past some of the things because we thought they were what's the word I'm looking for? Far-fetched. Like, for instance, we thought, they had some weird stuff. They had a lot of weird stuff in the Reddits. But but they also had some stuff that ended up being true. Like one of them was that one of the surviving victims saw the intruder in the house and go either near the stairs or down the stairs, something to that nature. But they saw the masked intruder. And for us, it didn't make sense because we're like, if they saw somebody, why didn't they call 911? And this ended up being a big old ordeal in the Brian Koberger case. Why didn't they call 911? But that was in Reddit. And, I'm an older guy. So this is how young people put out information through Reddit and things like that. And so being that the homicides were involved some college students, we probably should have looked more into the Reddit aspect, because that's where young folks are talking about things. That's where a lot of information, for instance, like in the David case, is coming out. And so I am creating a Reddit account after this podcast. I've already created one. I haven't done anything with it. I'm going to try to figure out how to use it. But when there's things that happen like this with like universities and things like that, that's where the kids talk. That's where they're putting out their information and stuff. And I think it's a useful tool, and law enforcement has identified that, and they have identified that kids are going to be talking on the Reddit, and they've utilized that, and they actually looked and found this Reddit post. And the Reddit post says, "I'm being dead serious. The police need to look into a gray Nissan with Florida plates, possibly a rental. That was the car that he was driving. It was parked in the front of the little shack behind the Rhode Island Historical Society on Coke Street side. I know because he used the key fob to open the car, approached it, and then something prompted him to back away. When he backed away, he relocked the car. I found that odd. So when he circled the block, I approached the car. That is when I saw the Florida plates. It was parked in the section between gate of the RIHS and the corner of Cook and George Street." Now, this guy's testimony is huge. And had this guy not taken his life, I think he would have been a star witness number one, right? But witness testimony has often been something that I've told folks that isn't reliable. It can be sketchy, this, that, and the third. I don't think so in this scenario. So in this scenario, this guy saw something suspicious, something that caught his eye, made him approach, and the guy that caught his eye was acting suspicious after that, running away and doing everything that involved in that interaction. That's a memorable interaction to have shortly before a very serious incident to have occurred. And so I strongly believe that this guy's testimony is far more accurate than what you would get, for instance, of somebody who maybe perhaps is having to think back a full day, without noticing something had occurred, or a couple of days, or a week, or 2 weeks, where they're thinking back on some information that on a time frame where nothing suspicious occurred. This is something suspicious occurred. He followed the person and the entire interaction. So I would say that this guy's testimony is going to be probably very credible. And when you weigh it out on witness testimonies, I think this one's going to be one that would have, obviously the guy's no longer with us, but would have been held up in high regard because of the situation. And so, kind of like a saying I say that, the stance will change depending on the circumstances. So the circumstance changes, so does the stance. My stance on witness testimonies in certain scenarios are one thing. And in this scenario, not so much. But as I mentioned, that's why. So for those that have watched for a while, be like, Daniel, you've mentioned before that witness testimony isn't, there's room for error in this, that, and a third. There is 100%. And I think that he could have gotten some things wrong too. He's not going to remember everything 100%. I would not hold him up to that standard of, like, for instance, a logo on the bottom left-hand corner of the t-shirt. What was the exact logo? Now, if he remembers that there was a logo just in general, that's impressive. And if he says, I think it looked like, all you have to do is just focus on the fact that he saw something in the bottom left corner that reminded him of a logo. Could it have been a logo? Could it have been a stain? Could it have been a default in the material? Could it have been a lot of other things? Possibly. So he is the Redditor. So he goes on to say the information disseminated to the public, given out to the public at the time of the Reddit post, did not include the full video from RH Historical Society located nearby in the streets there in Providence, and any released videos up until that point did not include a gray Nissan or vehicle with a Florida plate. Based on the tip, investigators reviewed the surveillance further and located a gray bluish Nissan sedan. It appeared consistent with the make and model of the Nissan Sentra sedan. The information provided by the Reddit poster was consistent with and corroborated with the earlier described video. The exact extracted from the area and the encounter between the suspect and John. Large trees lined up with the fence property of blank redacted area in that area, which obscured the view of the Nissan being parked there from camera angles. I got it. So what they did was they had to go back and they had to look at a bunch of different camera angles to find it basically getting parked because it was being blocked where it was parked at. Is that dumb luck, or is it because he looked at all the cameras and was aware of where to park on that specific day? If they saw him out there multiple times, yeah. And again, going back to the MIT professor, how does this play? Is it a situation where he was like, I'm going to commit these two horrific crimes? Or was it more like he committed this horrific crime, felt he got away with it, and then wanted to do something else again, had a bone to pick with this guy that lived by, and then went out there? Or was one of them a distraction for the other? I don't know. You guys let me know in the comment section. What do you guys think about the connection between this, getting the information that we get now, and how it seems like this guy went through a conservative effort to scope out and case the place? With that in mind, how does that interact with what our thoughts are on the MIT professor? Let's see. On December 17th, Providence police released still images of then unknown person later identified as John. On the evening, so the same day, on December 17th, a male subject approached Providence police officers where the Brown University Alumni Home building is located. The male subject identified himself as John and as the Reddit poster. John's full identity is known to the Providence police and to your affiant. John indicated that he wished to speak with Providence police about his interactions with the individual that the Providence police had publicly identified as a person of interest. John voluntarily accompanied police officers to the station where he agreed to be recorded for a recorded interview, so completely cooperated. John recounted that he first encountered the suspect inside of the bathroom on the ground level of the Barus Holley building immediately to the right of the entrance of the building on December 13th, 2025 at approximately 13:45 to 1400 hours. John described the suspect's clothing as inappropriate and inadequate for the weather. Specifically, he described the jacket and gloves as flimsy. He described the clothing, including the jacket, as baggy, with at least two undergarment shirts, one of which had a brand-style logo on the bottom right corner. John believes the logo was a name brand, possibly LL Bean, which is what I was kind of talking about earlier. He described the pants and shoes as kitchen restaurant worker style, of poor quality, or would be associated with Walmart. John, and this I don't know why they felt the need to put this in here, but they felt the need to put that John cast no judgment as to the quality. Can't make it up. He had kitchen/restaurant worker style shoes, poor quality, and would be associated with Walmart. But he cast no judgment on the quality. I was like, yeah, it is. Hey, what's going on? We got Krusty in the house. What's going on? Let's see. It goes on to say that, so yeah, no judgment on the quality. John described a large face mask covering the entire lower part of the suspect's face. He believed that the suspect was wearing glasses. John described the suspect's skin as weathered and cinnamon-colored complexion. It's very descriptive. He believed that the suspect's eyes are brown and his face appeared to be chubby. From the interview, where there were several instances where John made eye contact with the suspect and stood in close proximity to him. The initial encounter involved John locking eyes with the suspect. After this initial encounter, John observed the suspect exiting the building into the parking lot. John remained at the entrance until he observed the suspect go up Manning Street and then decided to follow him. I wonder what made him decide to follow him. I guess he just kind of looked out of place, right? You know, just kind of looked out of place. Goes on to say, John then described the encounter with the suspect near the RI Historical Society. He watched the suspect approach approach a gray or silver sedan bearing Florida registration plate. John assumed the suspect had a key fob because the lights of the Nissan lit up as the suspect approached, as if the vehicle was being unlocked by a key fob. This guy's very observant. And that's one of the things that I've heard on the press conference and stuff when they talked about him, that he was very well spoken and knew what he was talking about. Very observant. This is a guy that you want as a witness. The suspect suddenly turned around from the vehicle and walked the opposite direction from taking a left at the nearby intersection. John stated that the suspect looked at him like he knew him. John approached the sedan and observed two fanny pack style bags on the rear floorboard on the passenger side. So I wonder if that's where he had his weapons. I wonder if he was doing this last casing, walking around without his guns. I know that there was like images of him with what appeared to be like a bulge around the hip area. I don't know if there's something there or not. But if this is true, man, John got lucky, because this guy could have easily, if he had the weapon on him, could have turned on John. John's a hero, very courageous. He's also lucky. I'm glad nothing happened to him. Let's see. John remained on the block and observed the suspect looping back to the area, then switched directions every time they saw each other. John described this pattern as a game of cat and mouse between himself and the suspect. It's crazy. But you got to wonder, like, what are you doing? Why are you acting that way? You know what I'm saying? At some point, they encountered each other on George Street, at which time the suspect ran in the opposite direction. John then ran up behind the person of interest, slowed to a speed walk, and walked past the suspect. John then turned faced the suspect. John estimates that they were standing approximately 2 feet from each other. John asked the suspect, "Your car is back there. Why are you circling the block?" The suspect responded, "I don't know you from nobody." Then the suspect repeatedly asked, "Why are you harassing me?" During this exchange, John detected a cadence or an accent that the suspect's voice that he believed to be Hispanic. John saw the suspect approach his car one more time, but then John continued onto Waterman Street and did not have any subsequent encounters with the suspect. John informed detectives that he recognized one of the images released to the press as he encountered that day, which prompted him to post on Reddit. Detectives showed John a flock image previously obtained of the suspect's vehicle. When viewing the images, he said, "Holy sh! That might be it." He actually said the word. I'm not going to curse on here. When presented with a still of the video surveillance obtained from Alamo Rent-A-Car of the male renting the suspect vehicle that was a close-up of the clothing, John could not say for certain that it was the same logo that he saw on the person of interest, but it was in the same location. And that was basically what I was saying. And he also indicates that his stomach makes him think that it was him, but he did not recognize the blue bright shirt. So they showed him some pictures and things of that nature, and he recognized the overall shape of the guy and the clothing. On the morning of December 17th, Brown facility member reached out to the Rhode Island State Police regarding a suspicious vehicle in the general neighborhood on Thursday, December 11th. So a few days before, or 2 days before, at approximately 9:15 a.m. And basically, they said that she came up behind a gray sedan with Florida registration that was moving unusually slow down Waterman in the direction of Thayer Street. She recalled that the gray sedan with Florida registration was moving so slowly it almost came to a complete stop. So this guy was just kind of like casing the area, probably looking for cameras and things of that nature. A search of flock cameras in the area populated approximately 14 different times at the Nissan bearing Florida registration 62 David Queen Edward Victor, or if you want to say, well, that's the old police cadence or police alphabet that we used to use. The military, it's what, 62 Delta. Oh man, what's the Q? I'm gonna get in trouble. I used to know that one. Echo and Victor. I don't remember. The first of which was December 1st, 2015, 17:59 hours at Camp Street and Doyle Avenue intersection on the east side of Providence. There have been no flock hits for a front plate for that registration. So kind of indicating that it was Florida. Florida, I don't think they have to have front license plates. So the fact that they didn't have a flock register plate is Quebec. There it is. It's been a while. It's been a lot longer of a time since I was in the military than I was in law enforcement. Either both of them were a long time ago. Let's see. It goes on to say a flock camera hit at the North Main Street at Randolph, Providence on December 13th. At 8:26 shows the gray Nissan Sentra, partial Florida registration 62D, and the start of what appears to be a queue. This vehicle was rented. So they went and checked out the registration for this vehicle. And so, I mean, all the way back as early as December 1st, that this vehicle was in the area casing out the place. It's crazy. The vehicle was rented at Alamo Rent-A-Car at 270 Atlantic Avenue in downtown Boston on December 1st, 2025 at about 11:36 a.m. The renter of the vehicle through Alamo Rental in Boston is Claudio Manuel Neves Valente, 12277, who provided a Florida driver's license listing as high as 5'9". Brown University provided information on Valente. Valente is a former student with no current active affiliation. He's not currently employed by the university. He was enrolled in the fall of 2000 through the spring of 2001 semester. He was in the PhD program for physics. At the time, he had an address of 122 Governor Street in the city of Providence. And after the spring of 2001, he went on leave for absence. He officially withdrew from Brown in the fall of 2003. And then there was a immigration history. So on the immigration history shows on August 23rd, 2000, he was admitted as an F1 student to attend Brown University and was admitted at the Logan International Airport, Boston, Massachusetts. On May 10, 2017, Valente was issued a diversity immigration visa. On September 14th, 2017, Valente was lawfully admitted as a legal permanent resident at JFK International Airport, New York, New York. On Valente's DVIV visa from 2017, it lists Brown University as its name of his institution at the Barus Holley building as the address of institution list none dropout as degree or diploma. Dates of attendance from September 2000 to May 1st, 2001. So he was there for 2 semesters. I wonder what happened. I wonder why he didn't finish. You know, he dropped out shortly afterwards. He goes and takes the life of a MIT professor who's studying fusion. You know, did he feel slighted somehow? Was his work, stolen in his mind? You know, it doesn't necessarily mean it was. Does he think it was? You know, what the MIT professor was working on was basically free energy, which brings its own conspiracies, because when it comes to the energy and oil and gas and the government and things of that nature, it's been said and rumored often that there's a little bit of a conspiracy behind all that, where, certain people end up hurting themselves by doing some impossible things to protect the gas companies and the oil companies and things like that. And so, you know, that's going to bring out a whole lot of stuff. But I wonder what the motive is here. I wonder what it is. It appears, just from the brief stuff we know, it's a I would say he's got a problem with some, obviously, with the school. Did he feel slighted? Was he kicked out? Was there a problem? Given how many years ago it was, uh, could it be also they may not have records of why he left? Could some of those things be missing? Maybe so. Maybe so. If anybody knows, let me know. Send it to my email. I'd appreciate it. Let's see. No conspiracy. Fusion is just really hard to pull off. Yeah. Heather says the MIT professor was very much respected. They knew each other in Portugal, allegedly. Yeah, that's what they were saying. And so it comes down to like, because it's weird because you have these two targets that are so close. Is it just by sheer happenstance that ends up being the case that you have a school he has a problem with and a person who he studied with that he has a problem with just happen to be that close together as well? Because they studied in Portugal, and this was, I don't know. It's weird. It's weird. But further, in the last image featured in the below the below grouping of pictures, law enforcement obtained video of Claudio Valente at Alamo on November 17, 2025. In that critical video, Valente is seen wearing the exact same outfit as a suspect on December 13th. Specifically, Claudio Valente is wearing two-tone lighter jacket with the same exact color combination and design as a suspect. He is wearing the same or similar black shoes with dark soles, black pants, and undergarments poking out from below the jacket, and glasses. Below is the video timeline of some of the extracted clips compiled by the FBI. And so the rest of it is just this. So this is the vehicle, and this was flock. This is at 814. So you can get the license plate, the Nissan. It's bluish or silver. And you see, like, some of those details are the ones that you're going to come across where he said it was blue. It was like a silver color. Comes out to be bluish gray, bluish silver instead. And so back to what I was saying about, like, for instance, memory. Because somebody might look and say, like, well, that car back here is silver, which it is. That looks more bluish. And so you can see the vehicle without a front license plate. I can already hear the pro burgers going, it's green. That's funny. Let's see. And then he parked somewhere where you can't see the vehicle being, left. And there he is walking away. And he's walking back. Just kind of pacing back and forth here. And so this one's like at 10:37 in the morning. Maybe he's building up some nerve as well. Going back and forth, casing things out. Wonder if he's waiting for something or someone. And so the Redditor really, John, he's the one that really made this case. I mean, obviously they would have found this guy eventually with his head blown. You know, because he had, from what it sounds like from the press conference, is that he pulled into that storage facility on December 15th after he took the life of the MIT professor. And he never left. And so he probably took his life that night. And so they were eventually going to find him there. And eventually, without, you know, even if John didn't come forward. But then again, I mean, John having that interaction with him, maybe that's also kind of what leads to him thinking he's going to get caught now. And, you know, I don't know. Because he goes out and then he takes the life of somebody else and then immediately goes and dispatches himself. You know, that's, it sounds like, you know, like that was his goal. 2 of them, boom, boom, and then done. I know at the press conference, though, they mentioned like a potential flight out of Connecticut. Makes you wonder if that's the one thing that makes me think that maybe perhaps because of the way something went down, whether it was maybe perhaps at the professor's house, you know, the professor scratched him, or there's something there, or maybe perhaps, you know, watching coverage of the situation and hearing on the news of them talking about potential DNA on shell casings. Maybe he felt he was caught. You know, maybe that's what pushed him over the edge. There's a few things, right? You know, just kind of throwing those things out. This is the bus footage of a suspect in the driveway. And so this is December 1st. This is at the Atlantic Avenue Alamo. And this is when he's getting the Nissan. Look at the way he stands. It's a common stance with his hands behind his back. That was something that we were seeing him do when he was out there casing the area with the video surveillance that they were dropping. Did they take the shooter's social media down if he had any? I tried to find it and I couldn't find anything. Couldn't find anything about it. But I couldn't find his social media. He's talking to somebody on the phone. I wonder who he's talking to on the phone there. I just finished my hot chocolate. It's been helping out my voice. It's been going in and out. Look, there he is again with his hands behind his back. Does have something in his pocket there. And then the shoes that are very similar to the ones that are seen in the camera. He's got something, maybe it's his wallet. Maybe he's the kind of guy that carries his wallet in his front pocket, but he's got something squared up in his front pocket. That appears to be the same jacket that he was wearing the day of the incident. Same clothes. Goes on to say, on December 18th, an effort to determine the location of a drop-off of the suspect vehicle at the Enterprise Alamo Rental Agency. Okay, it says, on December 18th, 2025, HSI agent Michael Steinberg, in effort to determine the location of drop-off for the suspect vehicle at the Enterprise Alamo Car Rental Agency in Hartford, Connecticut, at Hartford Bradley Field Airport. While at the physical location for the car agency, the suspect called the branch and changed his drop-off location from Boston to this particular location. HSI agent Steinberg then obtained documentation reflecting the change in the drop-off location for the suspect vehicle. Upon information and debrief has been recently linked to the address at 1079 Commonwealth Avenue in Boston, Massachusetts. Interesting. And so they got probable cause for a buccal swab and also to search the Nissan Sentra and for his belongings, and not to be limited or included of digital and electronic devices as well. A lot of charges, 25 of them in totality. 2 at the top are first-degree murder. 3 through 22 are discharge of a firearm resulting in death, discharge of firearm resulting in death, felony assault with a deadly weapon, and discharge of firearm resulting in injury multiple times. License or permit to require to carry a pistol, revolver without a license, large capacity feeding device. 2 of them for the the magazines. A couple questions, put a couple stars. If you guys are asking me the questions, I'll go through your comments. Then we'll call this one a show. Yeah, a second. All right. Okay. This is extremely unfortunate. 100%. It's so sad. You really didn't even have, like, obviously none of this ever have to happen, but like a senseless attack on defenseless people who are just trying to go to school and get an education. It's crazy. Oh, wow. So apparently we have a person in the chat saying that they're from Portugal, and news and police are starting to investigate this case here too. Interesting. It's probably the MIT professor because they both went to school out there in Portugal. He had no friends, no relationship with anyone in his family. The great misters is how he was living since 2001 when he was dismissed from Brown. That is a great mystery. Was a deranged man with a vendetta against someone who was better than him, but his ego couldn't handle it. Unfortunately, so many people were affected by it. That's very, very plausible. Very plausible. That's an excellent point. That is an excellent point. Excellent point. You know, again, I don't think this has anything to do with anything like, for instance, like politically. I don't think this is a politically motivated at this point. There seems to be too many relationship aspects. Like, this guy went to school there. This guy went to and had a relationship with the MIT professor, went to school with him and had a friendly relationship with the MIT professor, or some sort of classmate relationship. In the press conference, it sounded like they mentioned that they knew each other there. And so it's probably something that has to do with those things. I don't think that this is some sort of politically motivated crime. I don't think this is a crime where they're going after the MIT professor because of the energy fusion, the fusion energy that he was creating. I don't believe that to be the case here. And so, well, guys, we're at the hour mark. I want to say thank you guys for tuning in. Please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hype the video, guys. Hit the hype button. I'll be back on tomorrow talking about a cold case with a guy named Mike Gatto, and he's from California. He's I believe he's a politician out there, did some work out there as a politician, and his father was, his life was taken about, I think 2013, I want to say, and unsolved murder mystery. And we're going to talk about that and talk about what is like his life, you know, how it was for the victims after or living through a murder case that's not solved. You know, it's an unfortunate situation, and we're going to have him on the show. So I'd appreciate it if everybody tuned in tomorrow. It'll be at about, I think we have it scheduled for 12:15 p.m. So right just afternoon. So don't want to miss it. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I'll see you guys there. Till next time. Peace out.